So the Blackmagic PYXIS is a camera everybody has been waiting for, finally a box style camera from Blackmagic. But the question really is how it compares to the OG Komodo. Not only these are compared pretty well in terms of specs, but also body design and now also price. Which camera is better for you, dynamic range, color science and many more you're gonna find out in this video. Coming up. Hi guys, my name is Paul, I'm a German-based cinematographer and this channel is all about filmmaking, gear reviews, but also DaVinci Resolve tutorials. So if that's something that you're interested in, consider subscribe, that really helps the channel. And thanks to Blackmagic to send me this camera. We are testing it for a couple of weeks now and yeah, it's been an amazing journey so far. So let's start by talking about the body design, and even though both cameras have a box shape design, it's also a little bit different. So the Blackmagic PYXIS, as you probably can see, is a little bit wider and a little bit bigger. That one has the advantage that you have a lot more mounting options, so it's easier to rig this camera out the way you want it to. On the Komodo, on the other hand, it's sometimes a little bit tricky, just of space limitations. You have a hard time to rig things onto the camera, but it's definitely doable. But also the Komodo, you can much more strip it down if you want to put it on a gimbal or in tight spaces. So both of the designs have its pros and cons, and the same goes for the screen. There was a little debate online on the screen from the PYXIS. And of course, it's a little bit cumbersome if you're shooting handheld and you want to adjust everything on the side. This is really cumbersome, whereas on the Komodo, when you have the screen on top, this is really beneficial if you're shooting handheld and run and gun and stuff like that. But on the other hand, if the camera is on sticks and you're shooting interviews and stuff like that, this is really helpful that you have the big screen here on the side, whereas on the Komodo, if it's way up here on the tripod, you cannot even see it anymore. So you see, both designs has its pros and cons, but I think on the PYXIS you definitely need the PYXIS monitor to control the camera. But even though I like the screen menu, everything is really nice and accessible, and it's really well thought out on both cameras. Quickly talking about the I/O, this is also much more accessible on the PYXIS because it's located on the side rather than on the bottom here from the Komodo. This makes it really cumbersome to put SDI cable on and stuff like that. So I have this camera since it came out, so I know what I'm talking about. It's really a pain, so they changed that with the Komodo X. And on the other hand, you can also rig on V-mount on both these cameras, and obviously the rig is much larger, but overall I think the out of the box camera is much more complete on the PYXIS because you also have a mini XLR and so many good things. So I think this is a really well thought out camera, and also the feeling, it's a tough camera. It's metal like the Komodo, and this one feels really sturdy, whereas the other Blackmagic pocket cameras, they felt a little bit like plasticky. So now let's come to the more interesting parts in terms of image quality, especially into colors. And we did a bunch of tests shooting outdoors, and I really have to say that the image quality or colors out of both cameras is just exceptionally well. Both of them are really looking so good. Highlight roll-off is good. The colors look very clean. The Komodo has a little bit more contrast right out of camera, and the PYXIS is a little bit more green, but easy fix in post. And also skin tones look really nice on both of these cameras. So in terms of image quality, Blackmagic has done a pretty good evolution, because I used to own the Pocket 6K when it came out. That one had Gen 3. You could get great results out of it, but you had to do a lot of in post. So the color straight out of camera is really pleasing on the Blackmagic PYXIS. Same goes for the Cinema 6K, and I also did a comparison between the Komodo. So it's the exact same image. It looks really nice. Now let's come to the more technical questions in terms of low light and dynamic range. Let's start by low light, and you might think that the Blackmagic PYXIS is better because of the full frame sensor and to the dual base ISO, but in reality, also when I was testing the Blackmagic Cinema 6K, and I'm using since half a year also the Cinema 6K into my camera portfolio, if you will. The low light performance isn't that great, to be honest. It's usable up to ISO 3200, that's the maximum I would say, but I wouldn't go beyond that, then the noise becomes very grainy and stuff like that. It is pretty comparable actually to the Komodo, because also the Komodo I feel very confident in using it up to ISO 3200. Of course it gets grainy, but if you do noise reduction you can clean up these images nicely. So therefore I would rate both cameras to ISO 3200 as the maximum. Then I was also interested to see how is the dynamic range, because in these outdoor tests that we did, we didn't see any kind of a difference between both of these cameras. So we did an indoor over and under exposure test to see what's the real difference here. And both cameras here are also pretty comparable. If we overexpose both cameras, we can go easily up to 4.5 stops without any issues. If we go up to 5 stops, the Komodo starts to clip heavily on my face, so that's not usable at all. Whereas on the PYXIS, you see it's just like a little bit here on my forehead, but that one you can remove or you can recover with highlight recovery. But I think this is not the focus here, so I would rate both cameras to the maximum with 4.5 stops of overexposure. So everything above is clipped on both cameras, but you have a little bit more wriggle room, I would say, in the Blackmagic PYXIS than on the Komodo. Now this changes when we come to underexposure. So the further we underexpose on both cameras, obviously the image gets more noisy. But on the PYXIS we also have a different problem, because we see a lot of CMOS mirroring on the camera, starting very heavily at 3.5 stops under and getting even worse when you go 4 stops, 4.5 stops. And also it's a little bit visible on 3 stops, but I would say the camera, the PYXIS, is usable up to 3 stops under exposure. On the Komodo, on the other hand, we don't have anything of that. Even by 5 stops under, we don't have any CMOS mirroring at all. So therefore you can use the camera, talking about the grain and noise structure, I think up to 3.5, sometimes 4 stops if you do a little bit of noise reduction. So in total, this brings us on both cameras to close of 8 stops of exposure latitude, which is a really good result. What is maybe a problem is the rolling shutter, and that was also the discussion on Blackmagic PYXIS, because it has a slow readout speed, yalla. So I tested that in like a normal walking situation here. As you can see, Basti was following me with the camera, and I didn't find it too jarring, honestly, on the 6K. So as long as you do like normal stuff, normal handheld shooting, the readout speed from the PYXIS is not a real issue. Of course, if you do like chasing cars and you're doing crazy fast pans, of course, then faster readout speed would help. So therefore the Komodo is better in that regard, but it's also not as bad as everybody is like saying that the PYXIS is. So I think it's pretty manageable and usable actually. So that brings me to the toughest question of them all: which camera is better and which camera should you pick? So this one is, as I've said, a really tough question, and I bought the Komodo, but if I wouldn't own either of them, I probably would still go for the Komodo, because I'm also using the Red Dragon and this one pairs nicely with it, and it's good to have a camera that has a global shutter for some instances. But the reason why I would probably pick the Komodo over the Blackmagic 6K is also that I have here a Wi-Fi antenna that I can stream the image to my iPad, which makes it really easy that I can hand over my client an iPad and they can see what's going on the camera. On the Blackmagic, it's unfortunately not possible. There are solutions for everything of that. Honestly, the Blackmagic PYXIS is a really nice camera. The image is really lovely and both cameras are absolutely amazing. So I think with either of the cameras that you go, you will be really happy. It heavily depends on obviously what kinds of shooting that you are in and what is your preference. And this one is a Super 45 sensor, this one is a full frame sensor, this one shoots open gate, this one doesn't. So yeah, as you can see, there are a lot of pros and cons to each system, but in general, both cameras are great. So if you have any further question that I probably didn't answer in this video, don't hesitate to ask me in the comments, and I'm happy to share my comments and thoughts with you there. And see you in my next video, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Bye bye.